Jaeger. He is currently deployed with our armed forces. We thank him for his service. He will be joining us.
Thank you. As I was saying, Mr. Yeager is currently deployed with our armed forces. We thank him for his service to us. He will be joining us via the computer through the World Wide Web or Zoom or whatever the proper term is. Mr. Jameson, can you hear us?
Yes, sir, I can. Thank you.
Okay. With that said, we will start the meeting with our usual pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we get down to business, a few quick announcements, I hope. In case of emergency, fire, earthquake, whatever, do not use the elevators. The exit is behind you. Take the stairways, clear the building. Give yourself a safe distance from the building. Bathrooms, end of the hall. COVID, as you know, or most of you should know, is on the rise again. If you're fully vaccinated and don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. If you feel comfortable wearing a mask, by all means, wear it. If you have not been vaccinated and you don't want to wear a mask, it's your choice, but I would ask you to leave. We also, looking at tonight's agenda, we're going to make a couple changes, if I can find it. Oops, here's the agenda. You can, give me your agenda. Okay. Tonight's appeals, the order will be switched so that Mr. Epperson will be the second appeal. Mr. Howie will still be the first appeal. The Nellenbachs will be the third appeal. In addition, as some of you may or may not know, our ordinance officer, Timothy Gray, has recently retired. As such, the building department has undergone some reorganization so that those duties can still be performed. As some of you may know, the zoning board has a direct feel and impact on follow-up on our decisions to see that they're carried out in a proper and legal manner. With that said, we would like to welcome the township manager, Mr. Derek Thiel, to say a few words and give us a brief rundown on the new building department organization. Derek, the floor is yours. We thank you in advance.
Good evening, members. As Gary had mentioned, just a quick update on the reorganization of the ordinance officer and zoning officer position that Mr. Gray had held for 20-some years. That position now is actually going to be transferred to a couple of different areas, primarily within the building department or community development, and then also through the police department. So Mr. Gray's job was really twofold. He was a zoning officer, so he would do zoning reviews for applications that you often see, and general applications for fences, all those type of things. That was one aspect of his job. His other aspect of his job was ordinance enforcement. So we're taking those two responsibilities and dividing them off, like I said earlier, to a couple of different positions. The ordinance portion of the responsibilities will be split between the current animal control officer, Julie Cordes. She'll be doing the field ordinance officer work, the clerical housekeeping type ordinance work communications, record keeping, scheduling, things of that sort will be held in the community development office and will actually be done by a individual who will be filling a new position within the collective bargaining agreement. And that will be basically an ordinance clerical type position. So that current animal control officer and that new position will work hand in hand to satisfy the ordinance officer or the ordinance responsibilities of the township. The zoning responsibilities that Mr. Gray had will be transferred over to none other than Lori Zalewski. She will be handling the zoning aspect, the cursory reviews, a review of applications for zoning accuracy, with assistance from Mr. Brian Borden, who will be working with us more than what he has in the past under his contract. We will expand his hours in the office by almost double. So it's really going a couple of different directions, but we felt the reorganization would allow us to be able to put people in areas that we know that they will succeed and have some better efficiencies within the department. So if there are ordinance issues, those will be run through community development. Ordinance complaints will go to who is currently in that position, who's performing some of those duties right now, which is Brittany. And that position is currently being advertised and will be filled, I'm assuming, by about the middle of June with a permanent individual. So that's the change over the past month or so to accommodate Mr. Gray's responsibilities. Any questions?
Questions from the board for Mr. Thiel?
Nope.
Thank you.
Yep. Just while I'm up here, special thanks to Mr. Gray for doing, I believe, 23 years worth of service for the township. Always did an excellent job, approached his position with a lot of enthusiasm and joyfulness. And for those that had the pleasure of working with him or seeing him out there while he was doing his duties, I think everybody would agree he did them with a lot of honor, a lot of respect for the residents, and had a unique way of making sure that residents felt that their concerns were being addressed. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, let's see, the animal control person is also going to review fence permits and things?
No, that's not accurate. So,
What does she do? Or he?
ordinance officer will handle ordinance complaints. Fence permits would fall under zoning in the building department.
Oh,
So that individual will handle pretty much like property nuisance violations, long grass complaints. There would be some coordination between that individual and the building department. Like if she notices a violation or a fence that would up without a permit, she would use, her witnessing that to report back to the building department to help out so that they're notified that that has occurred so they can follow up on it. But there is some distinct responsibility differences between the building department and the ordinance officer position. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sorry, talking to the mic. Thank you, Mr. Thiel. The next thing I'd like to briefly mention, unfortunately, as some of you or most of you may know, we had another tragic school shooting incident in the state of Texas today. I don't know the details. I just know it's one more tragedy in our country. I would like to take a moment of silence in honor of the people that lost their lives and those that may succumb as a result of this tragedy. Thank you. So we need, have you got the dates? We meet, Lori, the third Tuesday of every month for the rest of the year.
But we need it from April to January for the fiscal year.
What?
Meeting dates from April to January.
We can't just say the fourth Tuesday, third Tuesday, whatever this is.
We actually need the dates.
All right, can we provide that later? Okay, good. Okay, has everyone read the minutes from the February 22nd meeting? Yes. Any corrections, concerns? Hearing none, a motion to approve the minutes as submitted by Mark would be in order.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you, Jameson. Yeah, Mr. Yeager, if I leave you out and you've got something to say, just pipe right up, okay? This is a little awkward for me.
Will do.
Thank you. I appreciate your patience, as I appreciate the patience of everyone sitting up here and in the audience. Okay, that being said, I believe it's time for appeal number 22002. In our usual format, which we will keep to, Mr. Borden will give us a brief overview with his comments at that time. The applicant or his or her representative will then come to the podium and expand or expound on their appeal. That being said, Mr. Borden, the floor is yours. Thank you in advance.
Thank you, as always, Mr. Chair. All right, jump right into our first case this evening. So we're actually reviewing a dimensional variance request for property at 19065 Park Lane. You can follow the cursor on the screen. It is this guy right here. East side of Park Lane, waterfront lot. I believe this is Bridge Road up here further north. Site and adjacent properties are all zoned R1A, single family, which is your larger lot, single family district, typical of much of the waterfront lots on Park Lane and many of the waterfront lots on East River and West River. And the specific request before you this evening is for variances that are related to a new detached accessory building. Does not fully comply with the standards of section 19.11 of the township zoning ordinance. I do have a few photos. So these are current site photos. Mr. Schweikert was kind enough again to take some pictures for me to include tonight. So this is a look. There is an existing detached accessory building on property. The proposal is in a pretty much the same location, albeit it's larger. So it's a little bit taller, it's a little bit larger. If you can see the detail in the photos, if you see the little stakes that are out in each of the pictures, that is actually the proposed structure. So that's intended to be the footprint of the proposed building. So again, you can kind of see them down here, lower left, and then you can see them up here in the upper left, and then here, here, and even here in the upper right. Here's a site plan view. Oh, it's going quick. Site plan view of the proposal. So in red here, this is the existing detached I just showed you in the photos. The larger outline here, this is the proposed building. Existing residence, Park Lane, off to the left side of your screen. And then the next slide has some elevation views of the proposed building. So we've got the proposed building, we've got the internal facade where vehicles would enter both sides, and then the rear of the facade as well. As it relates to the ordinance in particular, so I mentioned earlier we're dealing with section 19.11. Paragraph D of that section of your zoning ordinance establishes 3 primary criteria for detached accessory buildings on waterfront lots. The first is for yard placement, and they may only be located in the side yard or non-required waterfront yard. The second is the square footage. It is a 120 square foot maximum. And the last is with respect to building height, and that is a 12-foot height maximum. And in your ordinance, height on pitched roofs is measured to the midpoint. So I can go back to that structure if you need to see it again, but I want to make sure we understand that we're still, same as always, pitch roof, midpoint is the height determination. So as submitted, this request actually needs 3 variances. So the first is for yard placement. So the proposal is in a street front yard of a waterfront lot. The second is for the size of the proposed building. It measures in at 865 square feet in relation to the 120 square foot maximum under ordinance. And then the last one is that it actually comes in just over 12 feet. So it's about 12 foot 7 inches to the midpoint. So slightly above the 12 foot mark, but slightly above does not meet and would require variance. On the right side of the screen, these are the same review standards we apply to all our dimensional variances, section 23.5B. Of note, the items of practical difficulty, substantial justice, extraordinary conditions in particular, but we do have 14 standards to apply, and I think as you're all aware, some of them do get a bit redundant, so I try to add some brevity to my letters by not repeating the same thing over and over. That being said, if the slide will advance. There we go. So here's a handful of points from my full review letter. So as it relates to the existing building that's out there, as a non-conforming detached accessory building, it can't be expanded or replaced without a variance. One of the things that is somewhat unique about this property and this area of the township are A, the sizes of the properties, B, the sizes of the homes, and I would say C, and I'll get to this in a moment, but C, the presence of several detached accessory buildings and structures in street front yards, given the nature of this particular area. So in terms of the building size and the yard placement restrictions, I do think that there's the potential there under a practical difficulty test for that to be viewed as unnecessarily burdensome to the applicant. The only spot it could go again is a side yard or non-required waterfront. There is not room in either of those locations for a detached accessory, and there is ample room in a street front yard. And then the 120 square foot limitations is obviously quite small. It allows for a small shed. It does not allow for vehicle parking or vehicle storage, more specifically. In terms of those items, I do think that those 2 of the 3 also could be viewed as being fair to the property owner and applicant. That's part of the substantial justice test. My biggest, I guess, qualm with this request is the height. I've not seen any real evidence put forth why they need to have the extra 7 inches in height. I'm not suggesting that it shouldn't be allowed, but it could very easily be reduced to bring that into compliance. Anytime we're dealing with variances, board's well aware, we're trying to minimize the number of variances and the extent of the variances sought. So unless the applicant can present you with some stronger justification for that 7-inch height increase, it would be my suggestion that the building should comply with height, if the board is even amenable to considering the other 2 variances. I mentioned earlier neighborhood characteristics. I think when you look at the overview of this area, I think an 800 square foot detached garage in a street front yard that is more than 300 feet off of the street front lot line is certainly in keeping with the character of this area and what's out there. There are properties with more structures that are closer to the roadway and certainly with even less landscape screening between the road and the structures. I've already mentioned that. In terms of potentially having some off-site impacts of the building, obviously neighbor to neighbor. If there's a building in the front yard, there may be some sightline issues with that. My suggestion there is that I do think that the perimeter and especially the street front yard landscaping will help to mitigate any issues with off-site impacts. It's the setback from Park Lane. Again, I mentioned it's over 300 feet. Given the vegetation that's out there, I doubt it will be visible from Park Lane. I suppose it could be certain times of year, but it will not be overly so. And then as it relates to a handful of the other standards, as I mentioned, there are 14 of them. I don't quite cover all of them, but in our opinion, I don't believe that granting of the variances will impact public safety, property values, neighborhood character, supply of light and air, any of the other host of items that we're looking at, including traffic flow and potentially impacting adjacent properties. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to take any questions that the board may have. I can go back to any slides if you want to see site plans or elevation drawings, or I can turn the mic over to the petitioner.
Anything from the board for Mr. Borden? Last chance. Hearing none. Brian, thank you as always.
You're very welcome, Mr. Chair.
Will the applicant or his representative please take the stance? Mr. Howie, I assume?
Yes. Well, first of all, before we begin, I'd just like to say I'd like to second Mr. Thiel's comments about Mr. Tony Gray. I've been fortunate to work with him for over 20 years, and he's always been a gentleman and treated me very fairly. So, you know what? That's not always the case with sometimes with building officials, but I'd like to wish him well. So, to get started, first, good evening, Mr. Chairman, ZBA members, city officials, and of course, Mr. Boardman. My name is Bob Howie. I reside at 2945 Riverside Drive in Trenton. My architectural office is located at 2363 West Jefferson, also in Trenton. On behalf of my sister Beth and my brother-in-law Joseph Dixon, we're here to formally request the ZBA variance, obviously, for the increase the size of the non-conforming structure. So, I'd have to say this is, you know, there are some unique elements that this site has. Just to get things going, I would think that would be happy to remove the third variance request, the 7 inches. I would like to just state what the reason why we had that. So we're matching the existing garage doors on the house. So once we start getting into custom sizes, you know what's going on with the supply chain. It could be 6 months, it could be 9 months, it could be a year before we get these non-standard sizes. But the other that dictates that height is we're trying to match the existing house roof pitch. But we can make the necessary changes to figure out how we can get to that maximum 12 feet.
I would suggest if there's still an issue after you've taken another look at that, if you'll come back and discuss it with staff, we might be able to work around that. But if you can get it done, I personally and the rest of the board would appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel comfortable. I think we can probably do it. And it's just going to be, I mean, it is, I think, like Mr. Borden said, it is over 300 feet off the road. So, yep. So, with that being said, I really believe that this is a modest garage. I can't always say that when I come to ZBA. Sometimes people try to put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bucket. So this particular case is not it at all. And I'm sure everybody had an opportunity to go down and check out the existing structures. And just 2 doors down, there's a very, very large 6-car garage, detached garage. And there's also a car, 1.5 car garage in front of the 6-car garage. And but I think Mr. Boardman spelled it out. There's quite a few structures there. Obviously, with this being waterfront and being street front, it creates this issue. Because if it was anywhere near the for that particular zoning, to give you an idea, for the R1A zoning, the minimum lot size is 30,000 square feet. This is 62,000 square feet. And if we were putting this particular accessory structure on that size lot, R1A, they would allow up to 1,400 square feet, and we're at 865, and they allow a 17-foot maximum height when we're at, it'll be now 12 feet. So, and again, it's not like we're proposing a 30 by 40 garage. We'd like to use the existing footings that are there. So I guess in closing, I won't dwell on it. I do have copies of every single neighbor along Park Line on the waterfront side. I'll pass it on to Lori if anybody wants to see that. Yep, and then I would just ask for a favorable consideration.
Okay, before you leave, we're gonna defer to our most senior member, Mr. Carnego.
Hi,
Start
Bob.
off the discussion, please. John?
Hi, Bob.
Hello.
I just got a little confused when I started reading it, and it's, the first line says, Dolores Howie.
Well, that was my parents' old house.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I knew that,
Yeah,
but I just
yeah.
wanted, it's written as, Dolores still owns the house.
Yeah, yeah. So
And then
there's-
you're the applicant, signed it, the form
Okay,
there.
sure.
But on the print, it says, Mr. and Mrs. Joe Dixon. So can you clarify who owns the thing?
Well, my parents have moved out of the house. They were there for 40-plus years.
Yeah.
And then my dad's passed away, so the house has been passed
Sorry
on.
for that.
My brother-in-law and sister have purchased the house,
Okay.
so that they are the
So they're the
owner.
current owners. They are the applicant, not you, right? You're the architect.
I'm the architect, and technically, I am the applicant for them. I'm here presenting for them.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not sure I ever seen that.
Okay.
It's okay.
We don't
It's
have-
all right.
We don't have a problem with that. Just-
No.
It's just, I got confused with
There's a little
all the,
confusion there. We want
Sure.
everything to be.
We want to be
Doesn't take much
squeaky
to
clean.
confuse me.
Yes.
Thank you. for the
Yeah.
explanation.
Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
Sorry your dad passed away.
Yeah.
Mark?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. You said that extra 7-inch height was going to cause a problem with the doors. You're going to have to order custom doors if you didn't take up to 7 inches. Did I understand that
Right,
correctly?
yeah, we're just trying to order 8-foot-high doors.
And
then
so in
that's-
order to get those doors, you have to be at 12.7?
No, in order for me to get the doors, an 8-foot door in there, I'm matching the existing roof pitch. So if you look at the elevation sheet, I don't know, is this on or no?
Did you have an elevation?
Oh, yeah. So if you look at the elevation here, this is a standard 8-foot door, and then right here, this measurement right here shows midway of the roof. So that roof slope right here matches the existing roof slope of the house. So that's what we're trying to match. And the windows are going to try to match, the doors are going to match, the brick's going to match, the roof's going to match. We're trying to make it so it'll complement the house.
Okay. So I'm all set. I just want to clarify that. I thought you had to have that extra height to make the doors work, but I see what you're trying to do now, so
Yeah.
I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else from the board? Ms. Wider? Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I'm totally in support of this. I understand the supply issue with the doors. It's unfortunate that we're in that situation in this country, but we are. But it sounds like you've made the proper changes to get it lowered to the current height. So thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
It
Thank
should all
you.
be as easy as you.
Mr. Yeager, you have any comments, sir?
Yeah, I'm generally in support of the motion. I did have a question because I couldn't hear particularly well. You were saying the 7 inches of additional roof line was required in order to not have a custom door. Is that correct?
We're trying to match the 8-foot doors, and we can get 7-foot-high and 8-foot-high doors. They're rapidly available.
And the 8-foot door is obviously better for vehicle clearance then.
Correct, and that is the same size door that we have on the house.
And
Okay.
if they raise the
I mean,
door,
looking at the packet, it seems like this. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
yeah, if they raise the door, I ran into this personally, then in order to match the roof line, the slope of the roof of the house, you're at you're at a higher point, 7 inches higher. So
Correct.
therefore, that raises everything up, and that's where that comes from.
I see. And it sounds like this this generally meets the character of the neighborhood, and given its distance from the road, doesn't generate a nuisance. So I'm satisfied.
Thank you. Just, this issue is an old pet peeve of mine. Approximately 30% of the homes in this situation on this island are in violation and have been in violation. And I suspect there is no interest, no desire, and we will not enforce that. But at some point in the future, it may be worthwhile to take a look at that ordinance. With that said, a motion, we have a, what? We do have, oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Any comments from the public at large? Thank you. Anything? John, do you have a comment?
I have a motion.
No comments? Mr. Howie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
A motion, one way or the other, would be in order?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir?
I make a motion that we,
Mr. Chairman, I can make a motion.
Well, we got one on the floor.
approve the
Yes, sir.
detached accessory building in the front yard with an area of 865 square feet, and I'm adding at the height of 12 feet 7 inches. And the reasons for this are, first of all, it's consistent with the neighborhood character. There is a practical difficulty in that there's a double fronted yard and there is no side yard big enough to accommodate this building. And there is an extraordinary circumstance. That is, this is a state-sized lot and there is a massive, very large setback from the front street. That's my motion.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 The motion's passed unanimously. Thank you, everyone.
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman, if Brian Friel's still present, he could maybe better articulate this, but I believe because I am remote, you have to do a roll call vote in compliance with the Open Meetings Act.
Brian Friel is nodding in agreement that I have erred. Okay, so let's see, that's 2 against 1. You guys win. Okay, we will call for a roll call vote. Mr. Swigert?
Aye.
Mr. Carnego?
Aye.
Chuck? Aye. Mr. Mills?
Aye.
Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
Mr. Yeager?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It passes unanimously. Jameis, before you're off this topic, it's my understanding that you personally have to say you're deployed rather than just me saying it.
I'd have to say that I am present.
Is that enough? I'm looking at Mr. Friel for guidance. He's good. Okay, thank you. I appreciate your patience. Okay, that being said,
Yes, sir.
we'll go on to the next. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. The next petition is, yeah, I know. We now have 22003, Mr. Robert Epperson. Are you in the back? You're here? Okay, good. All right, we'll start out in our usual way. Mr. Borden, as opposed to Mr. Boardman, will now take the stand.
I've been called worse, Mr. Chair.
Probably by people on this board, but
Thank you, sir.
little humor for all of you out there in TV land. Yeah.
All right. Next case tonight. Thank you again. 28662 Southpointe Road. Another request for dimensional variance. This site is, where's the cursor? It's this guy right here. And I did note in the aerial photo in my review letter, so this pool that is depicted here is no longer present. It's since been removed, so I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that too, because I know the aerial shows it and I don't want to confuse anybody. So we're on the west side of Southpointe Road. This is a through lot or a double fronted lot with frontage on both Southpointe and Barbara Lane. So we have Barbara Lane off to the west, we have Southpointe to the east, and under your ordinance, those are both considered front yards. They're both street front yards. Site and all the surrounding properties are zoned R1B. And petitioner is seeking tonight a detached accessory structure, not a building, but just an at-grade structure that does not comply with the standards of section 19.11. And I believe we have a couple of pictures. So here is the, where this photo to the left is essentially from Barbara Lane looking towards the residence. And then the picture on the right is, again, it's the Barbara Lane yard of our subject site, and off to the right you can see the neighboring property. And something you'll hear me say in a minute is you will notice there are many other structures and buildings that are situated in the Barbara Lane front yard of these Southpointe lots. So those are the photos. Here is our plan. Sorry, the mouse is really touchy. Okay. Existing residence. As I mentioned, that pool is gone. There's a patio here. A proposed 30 by 30 structure back here. The intended purpose is as a small basketball court, and it is situated, the petitioner did locate it such that it was 40 feet off of the Barbara Lane front lot line. 40 feet is the conventional front yard setback, so if this property were flipped and the residence fronted Barbara Lane instead of Southpointe, it would be at a 40-foot setback. So they did put that in. Side yard setbacks are both more than ample. Spacing from the primary residence more than ample. We've got 40 between, 30 to one side to the north, 15 to the other side to the south. And in terms of the ordinance, again, we're dealing with section 19.11D. And in this case, on a through lot, detached accessory structures are only permitted in the non-required side yard. As such, proposal requires one variance to situate a detached accessory structure in what I've simply referring to as, for consistency, the secondary front yard of a through lot, if you will. It is not the primary, but it is still a street front yard. So that is my own little I guess, definition that I'm adding to it to try to help clarify. So left side of the screen, same exact provisions, 23.5B. These are your review criteria. So again, I didn't say it earlier. I appreciate that you all cited these in the motion, so thank you. But yeah, any action that you're looking to take, please make sure that we're citing the standards of 23.5B. And I will point out again, those of particular emphasis, practical difficulty, substantial justice, and extraordinary circumstances, though we do have to give consideration to all 14, even though the screen's cutting off the 14th. It still exists. Come on. There we go. Can't touch it. So okay, so as I mentioned, so Barbara Lane is technically a street front yard. One way that I have tried to describe this, explain it, not only here but in other communities, is that it is technically a front yard, though it functions as a rear yard. So to give some consideration, at least some understanding from the board, when people have these scenarios, typically one yard acts as your access point, and the other is typically used as the rear of the house, the rear yard, where you would commonly find accessory buildings and structures. So it is a functional rear yard, but it is technically not. So that's a point of, we need to make that distinction. So petitioner cannot construct a compliant accessory structure or building, for that matter, that could be viewed as unnecessarily burdensome under the practical difficulty test. In terms of the substantial justice test and the number and or extent, the one variance that is sought, which is strictly for yard placement, that is the minimum necessary to grant relief for the petitioner. We've already mentioned, so this is a through lot with 2 street front yards. Township-wide, that is generally an unusual condition. We don't see this all over the township. In this particular neighborhood, it is more commonplace, as I think we're all aware. I'm not going to go back to the screen because the cursor, the mouse is being too touchy. But we have the site, the property to the south, the subject site, and then probably I would guesstimate the next 10 homes at least are double fronted lots, through lots that have frontage on Southpointe and also have the frontage on Barber Lane. The access, the front of the house generally faces Southpointe. The vehicular access, i.e. the driveways, is from Southpointe. And again, functionally, the Barber Lane yards, typically for this neighborhood, they do function as rear yards. To the point that there are several such structures in this neighborhood in the Barber Lane front yard. So we have a neighborhood, a bit of a neighborhood character where we've got buildings and or structures situated in similar locations. I did have, essentially my review letter comes down to kind of a suggestion and a question. The first is, I guess it really depends on how the board feels about this overall, but if you feel the standards are met, but the project and or neighborhood could benefit from some landscape screening, that might be something to consider. We've had similar issues in the past, and typically when we put things in yards where they're not supposed to be, a landscape buffer can sometimes help out in terms of views, noise, etc. Just a suggestion for your consideration. The second is a question that I will ask the petitioner to address when they come up, and that is, anytime we have essentially a recreational court that is proposed like this, it is always important to consider whether or not it's going to be illuminated. And the concern with that potentially is, if it is, then that's going to extend the hours that it can be used, which does come back to potential impacts on neighboring properties. So I would like for you all, I guess, to hear from the petitioner whether that is proposed or not. If it is not proposed, I think that issue is moot. If it is proposed, I think we would want to know some greater details. What type of lighting? Where is it shining from? Can you shut it off at a certain point in time, whatever the case might be, because this can clearly, we haven't seen this here. I have seen it in other communities, and when illumination is allowed, we were all teenagers once, and kids are going to have basketball tournaments out here, and quite frankly, if it's lit up, they'll probably play till 2, 3, 4 in the morning if you let them. I'm not suggesting we should let them, nor am I suggesting the petitioner will let them, but that is obviously something that could occur if it's illuminated. So closing point is just, again, trying to summarize the other items. Pending the landscape and lighting issue, don't foresee any significant adverse impact of this project, at least in terms of public safety, neighborhood character, given the presence of other accessory buildings and structures. Not going to impact supply of light and air or traffic flow. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Obviously happy to take any questions you may have.
Ryan, since this is considered a structure, it would require a rat wall rather than just a slab like a driveway?
That's a building code issue. I honestly don't have an answer for that. That's not a zoning issue. That's a building code issue. If the building official required it, then yes, they'd have to build it that way.
Ryan?
Anybody else? No. Just quickly, I mean, you're saying this is a structure. I'm saying this is a cement slab. What makes this a structure? Am I missing something here?
Yes. By definition, in our ordinance, I was surprised, but it is true. Basketball courts are defined as a structure, not as a building,
Right.
but as a structure. It's in the ordinance. I was surprised, to say the least, because my sentiments were probably along the same lines that you're raising.
Okay. Well, I agree with what you said earlier, then maybe some of these ordinances need to be revisited.
Well, that's another matter.
Discussion, yeah.
Yes.
Ryan,
Go ahead, Mr. Nelson.
having grown up in Lincoln Park, the lots are about maybe 45 feet wide. And of course, I had a basketball hoop on my garage, and my dad would go crazy because at 11 o'clock at night, I hung a light on a tree and bounced the ball until somebody said, "Jim, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, get in here." My concern is that I don't think it's here, but the bouncing of the ball and people guarding people and making noise. Are there any concerns about that? from anybody in the neighborhood.
In terms of, well, we'll have to wait for the
Noise
public
level.
hearing for that. I don't know if staff received any resident letters or not. I'm looking real quickly. I see some support letters.
We do, yes.
I think this falls into the noise ordinance issue that is more of a police enforcement issue than it is a ZBA matter.
Okay.
We had similar discussions about music, noise, mufflers, etc. So your point is well taken, but I don't think it's germane to this
Thank you.
discussion.
There's like 6 or 7 support letters here for this.
Sure.
Anyone else for Mr. Borden? Hearing none. Will the applicant please appear, or his representative, or her representative? Please state your name and address for the record.
Rob Epperson, 28662 Southpointe, Grosse Ile, Michigan.
Mr. Epperson, the floor is yours.
Yeah, like Mr. Borden said, good evening, Chair and the board. Just looking to utilize, this backyard that by the zones and the codes, you can't really do anything with it. And I went for a shed, and I included the pictures, as you guys all have, of there's 7 or 8 sheds on my block that are all there, that are all against the rules. And I submitted a shed about 3 years ago, and Mr. Borden pulled it up, and I included a picture. It was a 12 by 12 shed to store all the bikes and the lawn mowers and stuff, and so the wife could pull in the driveway in the garage. And it was denied. It's like, because it's the through and through lot. But I'm like, there's a shed to my neighbor like 10 feet from where I want to put the shed. I'm like, that guy's got a shed. Why can't I get a shed? So Mr. Cray off record said, you should just put it up on Saturday. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And I would have did that 3 years ago. But I'm like, well, can I just put this court up on Saturday? So, yeah, that's my son, Jack. He plays at the middle school, football, basketball, baseball. He's a straight A student. And I'm just trying to give him a court, give him a life that I never had. I was raised by an alcoholic, absent father, and one of my greatest goals and joys in life is being a dad. And sports, I connect with them. I coach Gyra football 6 years, tackle football. I've coached 6 seasons of baseball Gyra on the island. I've coached 7 seasons of basketball Gyra, so I'm very involved in the community. There won't be any tournaments. I respect all my neighbors. I got 7 support letters of all surrounding me in a big circle, saying that they don't care because they respect me and they knew who I am. So I'm just here to do it the right way, and hopefully you guys could grant me permission to build the court.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Mr. Yeager. Jameson, do you have any comments?
No, it sounds like it's a pretty unique lot, and if he isn't granted a variance to do something with his backyard, he effectively doesn't have one. So I feel like, as far as substantial justice goes, that seems to be the primary motivator there.
Thank you. Anyone else with a question for the applicant? Mr. Swigert.
Yes, sir. A couple of questions for you. First, there is a tree in the middle of the yard. I couldn't tell where the ball court is relative to that tree. Does that tree come down? Or?
No, it's not going to come down. It's about I'd say 10 feet from the court. I didn't put the tree in the drawing, but it's kind of close to it.
So the tree stays. The
tree stays. Yeah, and then also this court's going to be ripped out when these kids are out of the house because I'm not looking at this court when they're not here anymore.
Second question for you. Do you intend to light this at all?
I wanted to, but then I don't want to be a nuisance or a burdensome to my neighbors, so they won't be out there past 9 or 10.
So it's a daylight operation.
Yeah.
It won't be going into the evening.
No, absolutely not. That's one of the signatures from my neighbor. He's like, as long as you guys aren't out there till midnight, I don't care.
Okay. What's your thought regarding the comment that Brian made about landscape to isolate you from the people across the street?
Yeah, I'd be open to plant 10 to 12 arborvitaes to make it blend in with the neighborhood.
Okay, so you would be okay if the landscape plan that would be approved by community development after, between you and them?
Yeah, like between up here, right here from 40 feet from Barber Lane to the court, I'd put 10 to 12 trees in this area, arborvitaes, just to hide it a little bit, I guess. Yeah.
Anyone?
A little levity real quick. When it's done, will you be inviting us over to challenge your son a one-on-one? It won't be me, but
I included a picture of the basketball rim, and yeah, we'll lower it to 7 foot so you can dunk on it.
oh, thank you. Still can't dunk. Go
Okay.
ahead.
White man can't jump.
Correct.
Okay.
Careful.
Let's, yeah, I know, just make sure everybody else here is done.
Oh, sorry.
John, Chuck? Mark?
No, I'm good. He addressed the lights issue. I'm good.
Okay. Public comment, anyone in the audience? Yes, hands. Seeing none. A motion would be in order. Anyone?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, John.
I motion that we approve the 30 by 30 foot stamped concrete area for use as a basketball court for the following reasons. First, there are extraordinary circumstances in that this is a double street front lot, which is very rare on Grosse Ile. Second, it is consistent with the neighborhood character in that it is functionally a backyard. And with that, there are two conditions. One, that there will be no lighting added. And second, that there will be landscape which will be proposed by the applicant to community development for approval to isolate that court from across Barber Lane.
Okay.
That's the motion.
Second, anyone?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay, a roll call vote is in order. Mr. Yeager,
Aye.
Mr. Swager,
Aye.
Mr. Carnego. Aye. Chuck. Aye. Mr. Nelson.
Aye.
Mr. Mill.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The motion is passed unanimously. Mr. Epperson, thank you. You and your son have a good time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Glad. We can take care of that. Brevity. What time?
5 to 7.
Okay. The chair is going to take a 10-minute recess. Thank you. Appeals. Zoning Board of Appeals is now back in session. Thank you for your indulgence. Tonight we have a rather atypical item. The applicant from our February 22nd meeting has requested a rehearing based on certain aspects that the board will discuss. This will be an administrative hearing. There'll be no public comment. There'll be nothing from the applicant. This is strictly for the board to determine the first item as outlined in Mr. Assorti's memo that I assume all the board members have. Having said that, Mr. Yeager, since you were not here, I would recommend that you not take part in this vote. Is that acceptable to you? The initial vote.
So I reviewed the packet at the time, so I think I'm prepared to make a decision on this vote.
But you did not hear the testimony. You did not see the nuances. You were not able to judge posture. You were not able to judge by what went on during the interview, the veracity of the applicant.
I actually did review the video, which is posted to YouTube, and saw both the comments of
with all
the
due
homeowners
respect,
and that of the members of the board.
video does not capture everything that went on. Having said that, I will put it to the board, and I will certainly abide by their decision. The question before the board is, because Mr. Jameson Yeager, I apologize, was not able to be at the hearing on the 22nd of February in person, whether he should be allowed to vote on whether another hearing should be held on this matter. We will take a roll call vote in accordance with the direction I'm getting from Mr. Friel. Is that correct? Okay. We'll start with Mr. Nelson.
Do we have a second?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I just thought we'd take a vote. It's not really a motion.
We're voting on allowing.
That's all we're voting on.
I vote aye.
Any discussion first, I guess I should say.
I'm not sure I know what we're doing either.
We're strictly,
Well, wait a minute. The first motion is whether or not there's been a major significant change.
we're not voting on that.
We're not?
Not yet. We will.
A rehearing.
We're
So
voting
we're
now.
voting on whether
Yes,
Jameson?
that's all we're voting
Okay.
on.
All right, thank you. That's
Yep, okay. Good comment. Mr. Nelson votes aye.
Aye.
Mr. Swagger.
Okay, would you repeat that one more time? Is your motion that he is to exclude or not exclude?
We are determining if he be allowed to vote on rehearing.
Okay, I vote yes.
John?
yes.
Chuck?
I vote yes for this reason. The memorandum by the township attorney says the ZBA determines by concurring vote. The memorandum did not say the existing ZBA at the time of the initial applicant, so I think we're within the legal realm of allowing Mr. Yeager to vote on the initial.
The chair abstains. Motion passed. Mr. Jameson, Mr. Yeager, we welcome your comments. That being said,
I'm sorry, did you say that the motion passed?
yes, we had a voice vote. We had a roll call vote.
Okay, well, I thank the board for their deference.
Okay. The next order of business,
We haven't voted whether there's been
I know,
Okay.
that's
Just
the
making
next
sure.
order of business, yes.
Sorry.
In accordance with the memorandum from the township attorney, the ZBA will now make a determination whether a rehearing of 2201 will be allowed in accordance with section 23.4H, which all board members can read. Any questions from the board about what we're voting on?
No.
I would, Mr. Chairman, I think it's worthwhile to hear a summary of what was presented formerly and is presented now, so that everybody is absolutely grounded on the same page. Is there somebody who can do that?
Yeah, I agree.
Brian?
Brian?
Or the applicant?
Well,
I can certainly speak to, components of the new plans. It might be better served to let the petitioner jump in and give you those on their own. It's your call.
I think the petitioner will talk as to whether it's valid or not.
Well, the plans have certainly changed. I mean, the plans that were denied in February were essentially a footprint expansion and an enlargement height-wise. What is now being proposed does not alter the footprint of the building at all. It simply alters the height of the building. So it's an enlargement under the view of the ordinance, but it is not an expansion of the footprint. The garage is not being moved and attached any longer. So it's strictly, again, they are popping up. My calculations had it roughly 7 feet taller than the existing residence.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Sure.
Brian, the first submittal, do you recall the degree of elevation on the second floor? Is it the same as what's in this second package?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I think
Okay.
we'll defer to the petitioner. if
We
you
need to
an
know
answer
that.
Yeah.
That was one of the issues. They couldn't give us an elevation. That was one of my initial questions. So if we have an elevation now, we did not have one before. We had a drawing that if you wanted to scale and estimate, you could. It's more detailed.
What is the elevation in reference to? Is it elevation as to higher than the ground, higher than the water, higher than sea level? I'm not familiar with the particular metric you guys are referring to.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair. I think we're just talking about the building height
Yeah.
from grade.
They're raising the building height.
Okay, so this is the delta in the height of the building from its current
Right.
state to its proposed state.
Correct.
Okay.
Any additional questions from the board? Is there a need for further explanation?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we don't know then if the height is different now or same as or whatever?
It's
Does somebody know?
clarified.
It's clarified, I see.
Plans are different though.
The plans are different.
Mr. Chairman, it strikes me when you read this language in 23.4H, no application for a variance which has been denied wholly or in part by the board shall be resubmitted within 1 year. To me, that's perfectly clear.
Yeah?
I agree.
Mr. Swiker, though, I respectfully disagree because it says except.
It does state except on grounds of new evidence or proof of changed conditions relating to the reason for the denial.
Okay,
So we
then.
do have a substantial change.
What?
And
What?
What
and
is
new
the,
evidence in that they have a new plan.
what is the new evidence or proof of changed conditions? It's not the same as a different plan. What is the new evidence or proof of a changed condition?
I believe the evidence is that they, well, I would note that it says or, but I think the changed condition is the new plan.
That's not what this says.
Addition.
No, yeah, that's right.
Submitting a new plan is not a change of new evidence or proof of changed conditions. It's simply a new plan, which isn't a new plan because it contains elements of what we denied.
I think the township attorney saw that this is fitting a administrative procedure and for us to review it again, and we should defer to his legal opinion.
No, that's not, sorry,
That's
sir,
not
but
what
that's,
his opinion was.
that is not what, I'm sorry, you're the chair.
No, go ahead, John.
That is not what the attorney said. That, I specifically asked Doug Teal, or Derek Teal, I should say, to get the opinion because I wanted to be absolutely certain that this ZBA followed the process exactly correctly and legally. And that is what he gave us, the process. It's a two-step process. Number one, does this zoning board of appeals agree that this appeal has changed enough to warrant reconsideration? It's a yes or no vote. If the answer is yes, then we proceed to hear the appeal and make a decision. If the answer is no, then we go back to the ordinance. It can be resubmitted in a year. That's exactly what 23.48 says. And that's exactly what the attorney told us to do.
Well, then I call for a vote.
We're not done discussing, Mr. Yeager. John?
So what condition are you saying is
okay.
the same? I mean, the new set of plans is gonna impact the conditions that would change.
The conditions on the ground have not changed. The ordinances have not changed. The setback requirements have not changed. The elevation of the ground has not changed. The location of the neighbors has not changed.
Well, none of that is ever gonna change. Unless we have a major flood or some of that, or hurricane, or whatever the case may be.
Things,
That's not gonna change.
the road could move. I
Right,
don't know.
so then we wait an entire year for them to submit the same plans they're gonna submit now?
Except on grounds of new evidence. The new evidence, I suspect, I believe, is the change. John?
Well, I voted in favor of
Well,
this
just wait.
originally, but
Just, we don't, we're not,
as far as the resubmission, I don't think it's changed.
I was over there on two different occasions and looked around and talked to Mr. Nellenbach, and I would really like to see it reconsidered.
anything else, board members? Go on, John.
He said, but why? What's the change that warrants that? It was denied. What's the change?
Didn't we raise the lower level X number of feet?
Huh?
How many feet did we
Well,
raise?
I believe the change is also the footprint as well, is it not?
Correct.
And they're not modifying the garage at this time.
So is that enough of a change to rehear this or not?
That's the question, yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
As far as the plan goes, that's certainly a substantial change. As to whether this board thinks so or not, I suppose
Right.
it's up to each member.
That's correct. John, Mr. Carnegie, you had something else?
No, thank you.
Fire?
No, sir. I think my position is clear.
Anyone else on the board? Last chance. Hearing no further comments, Brian, you want to help me with this?
I-
Motion would be in order to determine, in accordance with 23H, 23.4H, whether a new hearing on 22001 should be granted. I will take a friendly amendment, or somebody can revise that. I think that's just right.
Yeah, the way I wrote it up was whether the provisions of 23.4H were satisfied or not.
Okay. Motion would be in order.
So moved.
Who wants that?
So moved.
We have a motion by,
Second.
so,
I'm sorry to jump in on that. Is the motion that the provisions are met or that they are not met? I think we need it one way or the other.
Chairman, I could propose a motion if you're amiable to that.
Mr. Schweiger has the floor, please.
I'm making a motion that the conditions of 23.4H have not been met.
We have a second. I'll second it. Now we have a vote on whether to deny in accordance with 23.4H. We'll have a roll call vote for Mr. Friel's direction. Laying this on here.
I think, Mr. Chair, again, sorry to interrupt. It might be helpful to remind the board members that a yes vote means the provisions are not satisfied.
That's correct. Do we all understand that? If you want to hear the appeal, you would vote no.
Understood.
Understood.
Okay, we'll start with Mr. Nelson. We'll start at that end for once.
No.
Nay.
Mr. Yeager. Mr. Yeager. Yeah.
No.
Yep.
I vote yes that they.
No.
Sorry, Mr. Yeager, I vote yes, in agreement with Mr. Schweiger.
Mr. Carnego.
Yes.
Mr. Schweiger.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. There will be no appeal.
Reflect the applicants have indicated they are filing a lawsuit.
All right, we have one more matter.
Mr. Chair,
Where? Who? Who's?
Brian, can I would like, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Really? Brian, this form, it gets me, it says the undersigned blah, 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 by which a permit was approved, refused for, blah, blah, blah. Nobody does anything with that approved, refused. You know, which is it, approved or refused? On the first case.
This probably isn't the appropriate time to talk about that.
Yeah, let's.
I'm just pointing it out.
We've got one more matter. Does anyone have a calendar?
I didn't these very
Mr. Chair, I have a question on that vote. Was it a 3-3 split?
No.
Nope.
There's 7 of us. It was 4-3.
Okay, I must have missed one of the votes then.
Okay. All right. Don't leave yet. Lori? Well, you don't have to. I can show it. Okay. In accordance. I've got him here. Give me a break. And where did Mr. Friel go? What? He bailed? Yeah, all right. In accordance with the requirements of the township, I guess, who wants this? Lori? Why are we doing this? Who wants this? Clerk's office? That's why I was looking for Mr. Friel. Did he leave?
He stepped out.
All right, okay. The meetings for the next year, I guess, are 6/21, 2000, these will all be 2022 unless stated differently. 6:21. What?
Lori?
Lori, third or fourth? Well, she's got her own message.
We wrote it down for you.
Well, that's good. I'm glad somebody did something to help me out. All right.
Here he is.
Here you go. All right. Again, all dates are 2022 unless said differently. June 28th, July 26th, August 23rd, September 27th, October 25th, November 22nd, December 27th, which we will probably not meet on, but I will indicate it as such. The following are calendar year 2023, 24 January, 28 February, 28 March, 25 April. That concludes the year. Mr. Friel is smiling. I'm happy to have this taken care of. I'm going to turn this off. Can stick around after the meeting. I just have a quick question. Okay, anything, so the next meeting, if it occurs, will be the 28th of June.
All right.
Roughly a month from now. Any additional items, any additional public comments, since everyone has left but Mr. Thiel and Mr. Friel? Oh, the Thiel-Friel, I like it.
So can I ask,
Wait,
oh, never mind.
Let's end the meeting. A motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Roll call vote again. Mr. Swigert.
Aye.
Mr. Carnego. Chair votes yes.
Yes.
Mark Mills, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Yeager. Yes would be appropriate here.
You say
Hello?
nay?
He said something about it, I don't know what he said.
We assume it's a yes. The meeting is adjourned.